Nearly 60 balloons flew into Poland from Belarus during the night. Polish airspace east of the Vistula River was closed, and in response, NATO sent a Turkish early warning and air control aircraft over eastern Poland. So far, services have found the remains of 4 balloons, each containing small amounts of cigarettes, hence the reports of alleged smuggling. The problem is these devices were also equipped with GPS modules. At the same time, Polish fighter pilots intercepted a Russian reconnaissance aircraft approaching the border over the Baltic Sea. All this happened on Christmas Eve, the day most Poles celebrate Christmas, rather than following the news. It was an exceptionally restless night for Polish soldiers. A Russian reconnaissance aircraft was approaching the Polish border over the Baltic Sea. The armed forces did not allow it to cross. In the morning, over the international waters of the Baltic Sea, Polish fighter jets intercepted, visually identified, and escorted a Russian Federation reconnaissance aircraft flying near the Polish airspace border out of the area of jurisdiction. This year, the Russians have already made almost 100 such flights over the Baltic Sea in this international space with these Il-20 aircraft, so the scale here is large. Whenever there is a possibility of getting too close to our airspace, these fighter pairs are scrambled. But that's not all. The airspace over eastern Poland was closed to civilian traffic, and a Turkish early warning and air control aircraft operated over the region. This was a response to the nearly 60 balloons that flew into Polish airspace from Belarus. These were most likely smuggling balloons, moving in accordance with the direction and speed of the wind. The flight of all objects was continuously monitored by radar systems. To ensure safety, part of the airspace over the Podlaskie province was temporarily closed to civilian traffic. We can say for sure that there were several dozen of them, which is a large number. And now, services are working to find and intercept them all so they do not fall into the hands of smugglers. We have information about the first findings. I would also like to appeal to the public not to approach these objects, but to inform the authorities by dialing the emergency number or calling the nearest police station. Despite the involvement of the army, the border guard, the internal security agency, and the police, only 4 balloons have been found so far. In Zaborovo, a balloon with a plastic tube and a foil-wrapped package attached to it was found lying by the road. An inspection revealed no pyrotechnic or chemical hazard. The services found small amounts of cigarettes and a GPS device at the site. Gonions. Here, the balloon fell to the ground after getting caught in a power line. In the secured package, services found small amounts of cigarettes and a GPS device. In Boguszewo, services found a balloon with a package in the forest. Here, too, small amounts of cigarettes and a GPS device were found. In Nowowola, the remains of a balloon with a plastic empty tube and, as with the others, small amounts of cigarettes and a GPS device were found hanging from a tree. The police forwarded information about the search to provincial headquarters in Białystok, Olsztyn, Lublin, Radom, Bydgoszcz, and Gdańsk. What is worrying about the possible success of the search is that GPS modules have been found in the wrecks that have already been located, which means the potential recipients are also aware of where the balloons have fallen and may reach them before the law enforcement agencies. The scale of the incident, almost 60 objects at once and the closure of airspace, indicates organized and hostile actions by Russia and its allies against Poland. The mass nature of the violation of Polish airspace, its occurrence during the holiday season, the assessment of the Russian aircraft's activity in the Baltic Sea, as well as the fact that similar incidents have recently occurred in Lithuania, may indicate this was a provocation under the guise of smuggling. There is no question of any private smugglers. If private smugglers had taken action that provoked the armed forces from NATO, and there had to be some reaction from the Russian or Belarusian side, I think we would hear about a series of mysterious deaths in Belarus tomorrow. There is no way this could happen without the consent of the Russian services. This operation was orchestrated by the Russian services. According to experts, the timing of these provocations, Christmas Eve, is also not accidental. Both of these incidents are aimed at testing the condition of NATO's eastern flank. As far as this condition is concerned, the Russians undoubtedly want to test our response, the interaction capabilities between various services, including NATO forces, and obtain what is probably the most important to the Russians, an informational advantage. Please remember that a war can start with just such a combined attack, where first a mass of balloons and cheap drones appear, and then the actual means of attack. tack, or everything at once. It will all depend on the tactics adopted. This is not the first time such balloons have flown over Poland from Belarus. A whole series of such incidents were reported in Poland over the last year. But not only in Poland. On December 3rd, the airport in Vilnius had to be temporarily closed because of unidentified balloons. Less than a week later, Lithuania declared a state of emergency for this reason. In September, instead of balloons, drones flew in. And in November, saboteurs working on behalf of Russia attempted to derail trains running between Warsaw and Ukraine. The chief of the general staff of the Polish army warned. The adversary has begun preparations for war. This really is a pre-war situation. It should also be remembered that Russia's aggression against Ukraine was preceded by Lavrov's famous ultimatum. In it, the head of Russian diplomacy demanded the withdrawal of NATO troops from the eastern flank, and the Kremlin repeatedly stated that Russia's goal was to rebuild its sphere of influence from before the collapse of the Soviet Union.
The war in Ukraine and Russia's track record shows Putin's willingness to target neighbouring states, including their children and civilian populations. The Russian leadership has made clear that it wishes to challenge, limit, divide and ultimately destroy NATO.
Further peace talks are yielding meager results. The Russian army carried out a series of brutal attacks last night, despite the holidays and calls for peace. Truly, one of the things that saddens me greatly is the fact that Russia has apparently rejected a request for a truce. Once again, I appeal to all people of goodwill. At least on the feast of the Savior's birth, let us have a day of peace. Perhaps they will listen to us. And let there be 24 hours of peace in the world. A German politician from the CDU party, Roderich Kiesewetter, recently warned that Russia has already quietly gathered as many as 360,000 of its soldiers in Belarus, ready to attack the Baltic states and Poland. NATO has yet to either confirm or deny this information.
The Trump administration has imposed visa bans on Britain and other anti-disinformation activists who it claims were involved in censoring American social media platforms. This is the latest step in a campaign targeting European regulations that U.S. officials say go beyond legal regulations. Those subject to visa restrictions include former EU Internal Market Commissioner Thierry Breton and 4 leaders of non-governmental organizations from the United Kingdom and Germany. The U.S. State Department accuses them of supporting censorship campaigns targeting U.S. citizens and companies. Is McCarthy's witch hunt back? As a reminder, 90% of the European Parliament, our democratically elected body, and all 27 member states unanimously voted for the DSA. The U.S. administration's actions stem from its opposition to the European Digital Services Act, DSA. U.S. officials claim that the DSA and similar legislation are being used to unfairly silence views, especially conservative ones, under the pretext of combating disinformation and hate speech.
There are in particular 2 other areas where we are currently digging further, and we may have to open, we'll see, other non-compliance cases soon. The first one that we are currently checking is Amazon. We are now in the process to check if Amazon is treating all products on its Amazon store fairly and not favoring its own brand products.
French President Emmanuel Macron has expressed his dissatisfaction with the White House's decision. According to him, regulations governing the European Union's digital space should not be set outside Europe. France condemns the visa restriction measures taken by the United States against Thierry Breton and 4 other European figures. These measures amount to intimidation and coercion aimed at undermining European digital sovereignty. The European Union's digital regulations were adopted following a democratic and sovereign process by the European Parliament and the Council. Earlier this month, Elon Musk's X platform was fined 120 million euros by the EU for violating online content regulations. This was the first penalty since the DSA was passed.
X has indeed breached its transparency obligation under the DSA. This includes X's blue checkmark. It deceives users. Anyone can pay to obtain the verified status, and X does not meaningfully verify who is behind it. It also includes X advertising repository, which does not work properly, and X doesn't provide effective data access for researchers. Failure to comply with the non-compliance decision may lead to periodic penalty payments on top of today's fine.
Sanctions against EU officials are part of a broader campaign by the Trump administration against what it sees as discriminatory digital regulations targeting American technology companies. The European Union has consistently rejected the U.S. allegations, stressing that freedom of expression is a fundamental right underlying the DSA regulations. This year, over 3,500 participants gathered in Zakopane during the Bethlehem Gathering at the shrine of Our Lady of Fatima in Krzeptówki Zakopane. Polish Scouting Association Scouts received the Bethlehem Light of Peace 2025 from Scouts from Slovakia. It all began in 1986. Since then, every year, Scouts from many countries carry the flame lit in the Grotto of the Nativity, creating an international relay of hope and peace.
Technically,
the flame lit in Bethlehem is transported by plane to Vienna, from where the Scouts pass it on to each other, the Austrians to the Slovaks, and we receive the light from the Slovaks. The light is then distributed by troops throughout the country. It has been delivered to various state institutions, including the Polish presidential palace. I would like to express my gratitude that the Bethlehem Light of Peace from the Grotto, where Jesus Christ was born, has reached me as the President of Poland, my wife, our family, but also my wonderful colleagues. In Poland, the light reaches public authorities, businesses, institutions, and thousands of Polish families. The Bethlehem Light of Peace has also reached Caritas. The Bethlehem flame will be passed on to the candles of Caritas's Christmas Eve Children's Aid Campaign. The donations collected on this occasion are used to support children and young people in difficult life situations, including meals, scholarships, and material assistance. Each lit candle symbolizes a specific form of assistance. The light of the candle symbolizes Jesus Christ, who was born in Bethlehem. Christ is the light of the world that illuminates the darkness of our lives. Light itself, bringing warmth and illuminating the darkness, helps us not to get lost in the dark, where various other lights are illuminated by interesting ideologies, modern, but very often unfortunately godless and leading astray. Hence, Bethlehem and this source are extremely important. The Bethlehem Light of Peace reached our editorial office during the company Christmas party. The power of this light is incredible because it travels from the Holy Land through all countries. But this lantern that has been lit here is extraordinary because it will light up millions of homes. 10-12 million people will see this light thanks to one lantern. It is an extraordinary combination of what TV Republica does and what this light that came from Bethlehem is. And I think there is no better definition of what we want to do. Give people this light, the light of truth, open windows, and show that there is freedom, that there is hope.